My brother and I had Andy's Lawn Care. First year, we made like $3,000. If you have good work ethic, you can do $100,000 in annual revenue relatively easy just by doing work that other people don't want to do. Everyone has this idea that they're going to franchise their business. It's nothing to do with lawn care. It's nothing to do with your actual service you're doing. You are now in the business of coaching, in the business of mentorship, in the business of marketing. You're a content creator. If you're going to hide things from your team, just realize that they are not going to trust you. Show your profit and loss statement. Share what's happening with the debt of the business. If you like somebody, you're going to work harder for them. In order to be able to go from 500,000 to a million, you have to leverage the labor of other people, organize it, create systems around it, and then lead those people so they want to still work for you. Started really young. I was 11 years old, started mowing grass. My brother and I had Andy's Lawn Care. We pushed our lawnmower around our neighborhood, making money. First year, we made like $3,000. We did that because we knew we were going to have to pay our way through college ourselves. And we kind of looked at college as our way of getting out of our financial situation with our family. My dad was a minister. We had moved 20 some odd times before I moved out at 18. So like just a lot of moving. We never really owned a house. We lost our house during the financial collapse in 2007. So our way out of that was going to be going to college. I wanted to become a medical doctor. I ended up going to college when I was 13 years old, and I used lawn care as my way to kind of pay my way through all the way. Then right before going and getting my MD, I went to Africa, did a bunch of volunteering over there, did a bunch of surgeries and birthing, just everything you could think of, because over there, medical student meant something different. And so I could do anything, injections, spent a lot of time in the burn unit in Kenya, came back to the US and just started doing a lot of shadowing and realizing, hey, I don't want to spend the next 40 years of my life doing the same 3 or 4 procedures, because I want to go really, really deep into heart or brain surgery, and didn't want to go to school for another 10 years, go into a bunch of debt, not be able to do the lawn care thing on the side. So ended up just pulling the plug on that, started Augusta Lawn Care, took my MBA classes at night, just as a backup at the university. And that's when Augusta Lawn Care was born about 10, 11 years ago now.
Wow. Okay. I don't want to glaze over this. Did you say you went to college at age 13?
Yeah.
All right. So we got a bona fide genius here. Dang, I didn't even know you could go to college at 13.
I remember going in, having a meeting with the president of the university with my mom, because they wanted to assess whether or not I was mature enough. But fortunately, passed that test and moved forward.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, if you're that capable at age 13, chances are you're also pretty capable to handle yourself. So that's awfully impressive. There's no doubt in my mind that there's some amazing knowledge that you have acquired along the way to understand how to scale a home service business from nothing to 7 figures. That's the big thing I want to unpack today and kind of let you share your expertise with us. A lot of our listeners are aspiring or early stage entrepreneurs, and getting from $0 to $10 is hard enough, right? When you're just starting out, getting from $0 to 250,000 to 500 to $1 million, that's a different story. So what was it like? Let's go back to the beginning of Augusta Lawn Care. Tell us, what was it like making your first dollars? And you had already had a head start, right? You were doing it since you were a kid. I said making $3,000. You knew the ropes. You knew how to do it. So when you really dove headlong into this and you said, peace out med school, I'm doing lawn care, what was your game plan? How did you guys start growing? Share some of the speed bumps along the way from getting from that, we're going all in, to getting to 500,000 and getting to $1 million.
Yeah, like I think when I knew I wasn't going to go to medical school, the only thing I knew how to do was mow grass. So it wasn't really a function of like some grand plan. And at that specific time, I didn't have any sort of ambition to scale it as large as we have, or do what we have in terms of content. And there really wasn't. It was like, I need to make money, and this is the only way I know how to make money. That being said, there was kind of a rude awakening a few years later when I got in a workplace accident underneath one of our dump trucks. I got caught into the PTO, the power takeoff, which is the thing underneath that spins, and ended up being a couple weeks out. They took me to the hospital. They thought I'd broke my back or my spine. I hadn't, fortunately, but just like all the damage to my neck and my skin, et cetera. A couple weeks out. And in that moment, I realized I did not have a business. I had a really bad paying job that I was working 80 to 100 hours a week in. I was literally on the hospital bed, FaceTiming my crew so they could do the next job, because everything relied on me as the operator. And so that was really the pivotal moment when I started realizing, okay, if I would have had kids, if I would have had a spouse at that time, dependents, I would have been in a really, really bad spot. The business likely would have gone bankrupt. And so the fact that we didn't, I'm thankful for. But from that moment, I started building systems and procedures, and like, how did we build this business to where it runs without me? Whether it be the estimate video process, pay for performance, open book management, all the different things that we talk about now that are commonplace, like those were not happening in my business at the time. And because of that, I was tied to my business. It was an anchor to me. And so it really was from that moment that I started like landscapebusinesscourse.com and sharing for free everything I was learning as we turned the business around. I just like would share what's going on. Like, hey, I'm doing this pay for performance thing. I'm not paying my guys by the hour anymore. It's working really good. And in 1 year, I went from not making anything and working 70, 80 hours a week at least with the crew, to the next year checking in with the office twice a week for an hour and made $280,000 in distributions. And that was a function of just like really getting religious about what are the systems in the business, what are the SOPs, what are the roles and responsibilities, and creating a system for the business instead of me as a strong personality. And getting from like, I think 0 to 100,000, many times it's like, can you do the work? Like, especially in home services, it's relatively low barrier to entry. You don't need a ton of equipment. Like, that's the nice thing about home services, in my opinion. You just need to be able to have good work ethic. If you have good work ethic, you can do $100,000 in annual revenue relatively easy just by doing work that other people don't want to do. Getting to $500,000 is many times a function of, can you sell? Like, can you actually market, create a website, create a sales process, be able to generate leads, and really iron that part out. The difference between 500,000 getting to a million is, can you lead? Because now you cannot outwork the problem. You can't work an extra 100 hours in the week. There's only so many finite hours. And so in order to be able to go from 500,000 to a million, you now have to leverage the labor of other people, organize it, create systems around it, and then lead those people so they want to still work for you. And that's really the three skills I see, is like doing the work, selling the work, and then leading the workers, getting from 100,000, 500,000, a million.
Yeah, you touched on so many points that I want to address here, but going back to the beginning when you said you were stuck in that zone as you as the operator, you were the business. It was going to fail if you weren't present. So you're, like you said, you're sitting on a hospital bed, FaceTiming your crew, directing them. Like, I think there are so many hundreds, thousands, maybe more business owners, small business owners, especially in the services or in the trades area, who they find themselves stuck in the business instead of being able to work on the business. So, what were some of the steps you took initially when you kind of had? It sounds like you had that epiphany. Maybe getting crushed in a dump truck will do that to you. But what were some of the first steps you took to say to start getting to that point of building out those systems?
Yeah, like at first I just started thinking, okay, like what are all the things I do in a day? So I listed them all off, and there was like 30, 40 different things, everything from unlocking the gate to answering the phone, doing email, and then just really, do I have a system in place? Do I have success metrics as to how I can make sure someone else is doing a good job in this area? And then do I have the training required for them to just take it off my plate and delegate it? And by taking the things that were lower level in terms of leverage for the business, like answering the phone or doing email, I was able to focus on the things that were higher value, which is, as you move up that progression of doing the work to selling the work, 500,000, you want to be doing less work and selling more. And then as time goes on, you want to sell less and actually just be leading your team, and they're doing the selling. And so that's progression. And many times why people will stall out is because like what got you here is not what will get you there. And so doing the work really well will get you to 100, $200,000. You'll make a good, decent living for yourself, but that will not be the thing that gets you to 500,000. And what gets you to 500,000, because you sell so well and could sell ice to an Eskimo, is not going to be the thing that gets you to a million, because now your team hates you and you don't have good leadership skills. And so it's a function of like constantly leveling up in order to scale the business.
Yeah, and it sounds like starting at the very bottom. So, like, even in just in practicality, maybe you're one person, you got a crew of three people. Um, I think I see this a lot with my clients working with service-based companies. Is the first thing they need to do is get someone in the office, or even if they don't have a physical office, get somebody who's on the phones and on the email machine, right? Was that? It sounds like maybe that's one of the first steps that are best to take, is the mundane admin items, right? Get those off your plate and then focus on a bigger problem. Then it's kind of, it sounds like it's just replacing yourself at each step of the way.
Yeah, like there's kind of three lenses I look through on this. It's like a function of what's the lowest leverage task that is not actually moving the business forward, but then also like what do you hate doing, and then what are you not good at doing. So I have to kind of triangulate those three, because if you just hate doing something, even though it might be a little bit higher leverage, it's still going to suck the life out of you to where you don't even want to go to work every day. And if you don't want to go to work every day, good luck trying to get other people to work for you, and they want to somehow love their job. And so I kind of look at through those three lenses because some people will actually love admin. They're super good at organization. And so they should actually focus on like creating systems for selling over the phone, for modifying the website, using technology, because they're actually really good at admin and organization. But what they probably lack in is the ability to sell. And so that's what you're gonna have to go find a salesperson. And so it's constantly a function of like, where can I recruit to plug the holes in the business? But the challenging part for a small business that's doing 500, 600,000 is like, you don't have the capital to go find an actual like A plus player and then pay them for a role that is taking up 20% of your revenue. Like $100,000 on a $500,000 business is 20% of your revenue. And for most of us, that's all of your profit. And so that's a very scary proposition when you're going out and recruiting, is that you're literally giving all your profit away to get on board an employee that, yes, hopefully will double the business, but that short-term pain is why so many businesses will stall around that size.
Yeah, and I think that experience is something where you have to be able to understand that this is an investment, right? Like people are an investment, and people are going to be the hardest part of your business. Newsflash, but at least one of them. And if you make that investment, and you then have to be able to train them correctly. So that's kind of where I want to take this next. Is you've made that step. You're like, okay, I finally did it. I got over the hump. I hired someone, or maybe even my first hire, my first really important hire outside of labor. What are the next steps for making sure, especially if you haven't done this before, and maybe you're only 2 years in business, this is your first time doing it? What are your next steps to make sure that that person is successful in that role?
Yeah. So like first off, I kind of look at it as like there's three different functions in most service businesses. There's sales, there's operations, and admin. It said otherwise, it's like sales, I get the work; operations, I do the work; admin, I grease the gears of the business. So payroll, taxes, etc. And so when it comes to okay, I have now established I am very good at sales. I hate operations and I'm decent at admin. Okay, great. I probably need to find an operations manager if I'm trying to scale to $1 million. And so, in finding that, before I go find that person, I'm going to first define what does success look like for that role. Is it that the crews are efficient, that the schedule is booked out? What are those units of success? I'm going to usually tie incentives to those metrics, and then I'm going to create training as to how they hit those metrics. And so that way, when that person steps into that role, they know exactly what to do and what good looks like. So that I don't just like, hey, first off, you got to figure out the role. Secondly, you've got to figure out what good looks like. And then third, like, then we will figure out a compensation plan. In the perfect world, I'm able to have those three things identified and clarified before they start the role, setting them up for the highest level of success. And meaning I don't need a top 1 percentile of a person that can step into a role and create it for you. I'm usually not going to be able to afford that person.
Right. And that's where sometimes it's, being honest, like if you're a small operator, small business owner, you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're building as you're flying. So this is one of those where maybe something, tell me if this is a good idea, where you bring in that first hire and you say, hey, we're going to work together on developing the SOPs here. I have them out loosely through a lot, oftentimes it's going to be in your head, but work with them. And if you make that part of their job to help you record the SOPs of the position, now you've got it in stone, right? And you've got someone else that's helping you flesh that out too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, with the advent of AI too, it just allows us to be even more seamless, right? There's no reason why leading up to making this hire, I can't have an AI tool recording everything I'm doing, processing, making SOPs for me on my behalf using Loom, using ChatGPT, etc. Like ChatGPT, I can make a screen recording, take the transcript from that video, throw it in a ChatGPT and say, make an SOP for this, and it will pump out a great checklist for you. And so there's just no reason why, in my opinion, you can't at least give them, hey, here's where I'm at. If you want to improve this, great. But here's where I'm at. Instead, and the reason most people will not get the big hire is because they don't have these things nailed down, and they can't afford 2 to 3 months of unproductive labor while that person's trying to figure out the SOPs. But every day you're doing their job, so record it. Use screen recording, use AI to be able to create these SOPs. And that's like where I think AI right now shines. And like everyone's like, oh, so scared about AI and like what robots in the future. That will come. Like 15, 20 years, maybe we will be out of job of mowing grass. However, right now, the advantage of AI and the companies that will win and even be alive for the robotic revolution will be the companies that use it to be able to streamline operations and make sure that things like onboarding are really, really smooth.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned was your what is it? Pay for performance. Is that right? It's kind of
Yep.
it seems like a system that you pioneered, and this is for it's a compensation model. So I want to talk about that because that sounds really interesting to me. Because I know for a lot of my clients, that's a very difficult thing to handle when it comes to, especially when they're trying to attract new talent or new technicians, you name it. So I want you to take the mic and tell us all about the pay for performance.
Yeah, like well, the frustrating part with any sort of labor industry is the fact that the employee is compensated. If you're paying them by the hour, the longer the job takes, the more money they make. Whereas the shorter the job takes for me as an owner, the more money I make because the job is done more efficiently. And so that's the constant push and pull and kind of friction between an employer and employee. And so with P for P, it's simply a function of like, hey, you get a percentage of all the labor revenue. So the harder you work, the more money you make. We're all going in the same direction, which is we want the job done as efficiently as possible and the customer remain happy. And we all speak the same language. I don't have to look over their shoulder. Are they on, scrolling through TikTok? Are they, on their phone? They stop at gas stations. Like, hey, if you want to do that, that's fine. You will make less money. And if someone else is over here wants to make more money, they can outperform someone and make 2 to 3 times as much if they're hustling throughout the day. And it just didn't make any sense to me why a young, hungry person that's been working for the company for 3 months can be making more profit for the business, double or triple in profit, not just revenue, but like profit for the business, doubling or tripling. And yet they're making $1 or $2 less per hour than someone else who's been around there for 3 or 4 years, but yet sleeps in the truck, stops at every gas station, takes 48 smoke breaks in a day, and is completely detached from the value of the company. And so it's just simply a merit-based system, but the harder you work, the more money you make. And to high performers, this is attractive because the thing that they want to do the least is work with B and C players that are sucking the life from them every single day. And they have to know that they're literally making the same pay as this person and they're pulling all the weight. And so it's also a way to kind of like self purge and self clean the business because when a new team member comes on, in the past, it would take me 3 to 4 months. And all of a sudden, I get all these stories of what was happening in the field when I fire them. Now it's like within a day or two, if they're not pulling their weight and the crew doesn't feel that way, they're like, hey, we want this person off of our crew because they're affecting our performance. And so it's a self purging mechanism as well internally for the team to keep only A players.
I love that. So you said it's a percentage of the revenue on the job. If you can share some numbers around that, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so it's a percentage of the labor revenue because like materials can
Okay.
get in there and mess things up, et cetera. So
Hmm.
it's like we have budget hours and then we have our hourly rate. So let's just say there is 40 budgeted hours on a job and our hourly rate is $100 per man hour. That's $4,000 worth of labor revenue. Now, as a crew member, I would know, okay, I'm making one third of that, which means I am making $1,333 on this job, regardless if it takes me 10 hours, 20 hours, 50 hours, or 70 hours. And so, how I do the job as efficiently as I possibly can come up with is going to be up to me. How hard I work, whether I take breaks, all of that is now up to the employee and them figuring out more efficient ways of doing the work and making sure that when they leave, the customer's happy. Because the thing that people always say, like, if you do that, all the quality goes out the window. Everyone just makes mistakes. Okay, great. So what we do is we have yellow slips. If someone has a callback, they have to go back to the job site. There's no more revenue being made, so they're on the hook. And then if there's damage cases, it's coming out of their pay for performance. So we protect their base pay, and that's like what we would market in terms of their hourly rate. And we make sure that on overtime hours and legally everything is dotted and crossed. But when it comes to their bonus, their pay for performance bonus, that is on the table if they don't do a high quality job, where their customers leave, complain, they damage stuff. And so it keeps the crew accountable and the push and pull of quantity and quality is met to ensure that like there's a high outcome of success and that quality control doesn't fall on me as the owner. It falls on the crew because now the crew will make sure that other people on the crew are doing a good job because if they don't, they know they'll be impacted.
Right, absolutely. So how does this look across your franchise locations? Does this mean that when it like comes to hiring or attracting talent, are you guys basically or your locations, is it inbound? People know that Augusta's a place that you want to work because you have the highest earning potential and it's for the A players? Does it work like that as well in recruitment?
It's becoming more like that. Like as the brand has grown, I do a lot of social media. So a lot of times, like the team members will watch the videos, they'll see what's going on, they'll hear about P4P. And again, the only people that it sounds appealing to is hard workers. The people who like just
Mhm.
they know they skate along, they hate the system. So
But
what's
those are the
nice is
people you want to filter out.
Correct, exactly. So
Yeah.
like now we're getting to the point where there are hundreds of applicants every week coming into Augusta, just organically through the website, and it is many times it is after a year, 2, 3 years of a location being in an area, and all of those other employees that talk to each other at gas stations, et cetera, start feeling, oh, I can, like, even though their base pay is the same as what I'm making, people are making 5, 10, $15 more an hour, and it's if they're hardworking. I want to be over there. And so it is very much of a long term brand play that to just attract the best talent. And the objective is not to put other competitors out of business. Is a function of I hope that they just adopt P4P. Like we have it made for the public, and we create software. We have free training and books about it. So like it's all there. Anyone can do it. And our goal is to change the level of professionalism in the landscaping industry. And to do that, I put pressure on my competitors to have to adopt these systems. And so if they want to retain their people, my goal is that we get so big that they have to use P4P. They have to do open book management. They have to do profit sharing in order to retain their best people.
It seems like such a no-brainer. Why do you think no one's really doing this?
Because it's easy to pay. It's lazy to pay by the hour. Because all I'd have to do is track their time. At the end of the week, I write them a check. P4P does take more work. You have to have budget hours in every job. You're gonna have employees questioning you on your estimates. You're gonna have crew members that try to abuse the system. And then there's always the question of like, well, what happens if there's non-revenue producing work, like oil changes or sharpening the blades or shop work? These are all things that we've had to think of. What about if there's a trainer and then there's someone really novice? Well, now their revenue for the day is gonna go lower. What happens there? So each of these little things we have to try to create mechanisms for. So there's a trainer bonus, there is a shop maintenance. Like there's all these different ways of manually adjusting P4P to make sure it stays balanced. And it's also difficult to explain to your team. Like they come in, never have worked a job like this, always hourly wages. So like I've got to train them on the system. And it can sometimes take 3, 4, 6 weeks for them to really understand it, grasp it, and then buy into it. And so that's a much more difficult proposition for an owner than just like, hey, yes, your hourly rate is X. Oh, you want to raise? Yes, I'll give you $1 more. Like this is it takes more work on the back end, creating systems around pricing. It creates much more of a transparent relationship with your team because we share all of the numbers, and you better make sure if you're going to share all your numbers and you're going to pay them based upon it, that you better know what's going on. So it's much more more work. And the bottom line is what I always point to is like the year I switched, I went from hardly making any money to my crew I was able to afford benefits for them, pay them by about $4 more per hour, as well as I worked literally 5% of the time in the business. And that's actually the year after that when we franchised because I actually had time to do stuff. And so the results kind of speak for themselves. Once people actually fully embrace the system, it works. What I see over and over again, people like do this half-baked system. Like, well, I kind of do P4P, but then on big projects I don't, or on like this other service I do, or I don't share the numbers with the team, I only share some of it, or I give them like a percent. Like they start to hybridize the system and then it doesn't work. And then for that reason, they think that the whole system doesn't work for them.
Of course. You mentioned multiple times now open book management. When I worked in lawn care years ago, we had a pretty forward-thinking owner, and he ran the company Open Book. Can you expound upon that for those who might not know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think explain the easiest way it is. If you were to work for somebody, would you work harder for someone that A, you liked, or B, someone you did not like? Like I happen to believe that if you like somebody, you're going to work harder for them. You're going to you're going to put the extra mile forward. You're going to pull a little harder. If you don't like them, you're probably going to siphon gas out of their trucks, look for ways to damage their stuff. You're going to say bad things about them with the rest of the crew. There's going to be bad culture. Well, then the question becomes, well, how do I make sure that someone doesn't like me? I hide things from them. I'm dishonest. And so if you're going to hide things from your team, just realize that they are not going to trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to like you. And if they don't like you, they're not going to work as hard for you. And so in my opinion, although it is somewhat intimidating to share your numbers with your team, it's also a function of it does return back to you from a business and economic perspective. And then the argument is, well, if I'm not making any money, I don't want to scare my team and they all leave. The bottom line is this is the halftime speech from the coach, which is like, hey guys, we're all in it together. We've got to turn this thing around. And I've had that conversation. I've also had the conversation when we are making a bunch of money and I wasn't out in the field at all. The crew hardly knew me and I'm showing up to an offsite meeting, sharing about how much profit we made. And so that's when it leads to, you can't do just open book management. I've also got to have profit sharing, which is when we make money, I will give you a chunk of it. And so when you start giving out thousands of dollars worth of profit sharing, they still want that number to be bigger. And so, in my opinion, there's really no reason not to open up the numbers unless you don't know your numbers or they're a mess or you're commingling funds with personal funds and accounts, et cetera. That's usually, honestly, why most people can't do profit open book management and they can't do profit sharing is because they don't actually have clean books.
Hmm. When would be the best time for a business to start open book management? Right from the get go, when they're young and barely making any money, or when you get a little further along? Is there a
I
better
think right
time than
away.
not?
I think right away because when you're small, it's that we're a team, we're a band, we're the underdog, and you rally around that. Like, and also when you're growing and you're super small, like you're growing 200,000, 400,000, 600,000, you're buying more trucks, you're getting more equipment. To the team member, they just look at that and like, oh, they must be rolling in the dough. When you literally might be barely scraping by because you're plowing money back into the business. So if that's the case, prove it to them, like show it to them. And then they will say, oh, wow, like he's not even making as much as me, but he shows up every single day. He believes in this business. And so I think it's a function of like, there is no point in time when hiding things from your team is a great idea. And so there's certain levels of like a transparency that some people are comfortable with. Like, for example, maybe you don't share how much everyone's making in the business. Sometimes maybe you don't share how much you're making. Like, these are levels of, the gray area, but ultimately it's like show your profit and loss statement, share what's happening with the debt of the business. And if anyone has a question, if you can't answer it, just be like, hey, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out with you guys. And it creates a culture of like, we are in this together. We are figuring this out together. And whether I'm making a bunch of money and giving a piece of it to the team, or I'm making no money and I'm still showing up and working 14 hours a day, we all are on the same page, and there's no bickering or backbiting or people saying stuff about the owner that are not true, but simply in the presence of ambiguity and in lack of information being flowed, nothing good is going to come of that in terms of the culture.
Yeah, well, and I recall back, I mean, I was, what was I, 22, 23 years old when I was at that company. And when I first understood that this was what they were doing, their open book, it put a level of buy-in in me that I hadn't experienced before, because now I'm like, oh, wow. I like, it made me feel like I'm the business owner, because we would do revenue per routes, and you'd have your goal every month. And if you exceeded your goal, there was extra bonuses on top of it. And then the other techs, we'd kind of race, and it'd be a competition. So we gamified it, and it meant a lot to me as just a technician making $9 an hour, that I could control income in this business. And because the books were open, and we'd have a monthly meeting, say, hey, here's what we all did. Here's where the company's at. Here's the P&L, which at that age I knew nothing about P&L, but I was like, hey, that's cold hard cash, and I had an effect on that. It made me work even harder than I was, because it just, I don't know, it switched that flip in the mindset. So I think that was definitely something that made a huge difference at that company.
Yeah, and I think that the reason, like, most owners get really frustrated by the fact that, why don't people treat the business like me? And like ultimately you own the equity. So no one's going to necessarily treat it like you. However, if you want to get as close to that as possible, the two things you can do is give them the information that an owner has and the compensation that an owner has. So in my opinion, the compensation of an owner is the harder I work, the more money I make. And the information of an owner is I have open book management. I see the numbers. I know what's going on. The reason you work so hard and you're so efficient is because you know that if you don't get this job done tonight, that you're going to lose this customer. If you don't get this project wrapped up this week, we're going to be overbooked next week. So like you have full information. And so if you can't share that with your team, I would employ you to clean up the books, do whatever is required so you can share that information, because then you at least get that discretionary effort that is unlocked when they have the information and the compensation like you have.
Absolutely. So I want to shift a little bit towards the franchising of your business. First of all, I want to zoom out. I don't think I covered it at the beginning, but Augusta Lawn Care, what are all the services that you guys provide exactly? And then I want to talk about how you franchise the business.
Yeah, we do mowing, treatments, landscaping, pretty much anything to do with grass and trees. We got you.
Okay, so it includes like building out landscape projects, like hardscapes, um, all of it. Anything that's landscape related or lawn care
Yeah,
related.
each of our locations kind of are independent. They can choose which services they want, and we
Gotcha.
usually index towards more of the simple services. So like mowing, bush trimming, bed maintenance, treatments. We usually don't go the direction of like massive retaining walls, big paver patios. There are some locations that do that, but generally, as people simplify and standardize, and they want to have like multiple locations, as they want to have where they don't have to be there all the time, and the location runs without them, you're trying to cut out custom projects. You're trying to cut out complex services. And usually those are the things that go as time goes on.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so the sweet spot would be mowing, the actual fertilization, weed care, things like that, and then like spring and fall cleanups, mulching the beds, pruning the trees and the bushes and the plants, doing plantings, or maybe designing a quick new garden bed out front, something like that.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, very cool. All right, so when you said you franchised about 5 or 6 years ago, what was the impetus for franchising? What made you feel like this was the next step in the business?
Yeah, so I'd been creating content. I created landscape business course for free for the community and started just sharing all the systems and stuff. And it was fun. I enjoyed making the content. But ultimately what I found is like people just looked to me as like a content creator, maybe a consultant. It was like an optional thing. And so I was always frustrated by the fact like I saw the impact the pay for performance had on my business, and yet like the amount of people doing it was like so low. I had a free book, free course. I had software that they could run P4P from, all of that, and just low adoption. And so like, hey, great. The only way for me to be able to actually compete, to see these systems change the industry, is actually compete with every single person. And so that's when we started franchising. And so we have 180 locations now. We want to get to 1,000. I think if we get to 1,000, we'll penetrate enough of the market to where we're competing with most landscapers. There's 600,000 of them in the U.S. alone. But in terms of geography, we would be competing with most of them. And so by doing that, we put the pressure on them to answer their phones 24/7 like we do, get pricing to customers immediately like we do, use pay for performance like we do. And so like the systems that we live by will inherently be required to compete with us. And by doing that, then the customer starts to demand that improved level of service. And that's how we kind of elevate the whole industry. So as much as I don't want to like, I don't want to see anyone hurt or like, um, our competitors, quote unquote, be hurt. It's a function of, in order for them to listen, they have to compete. And we can see directly, like when we move into a new market, I can see like people sign up for pay for performance software. They get home service web design. They use Copilot CRM. Like they start to actually like formalize the systems of their business. And like, that's the whole objective.
Okay, got it. And then so when you started franchising, how quickly did it go? Did you, how quickly did you go from one or two franchises to 10, 20 more?
Yeah, the first 10 are really difficult, because like you have no track record, right? So I still don't know why they all joined. There was a first group of 10 I kind of pre-sold and they all came. Um, and yeah, like you look back and kind of cringe at like the level of support you had, the training that you did, but just an evolution. Like every year just gets better and better. We offer more support. You put more infrastructure in place. Command Center now does like all their phone calls and can run their payroll and do their email and like manage a lot of the admin side of things for them. Even the sales perspective now, we have like instant pricing on the website, and we have AI to be able to do a lot of the pricing. So like that's all good now, but like at the beginning, how I got them, I have no idea. I think I only had like, I want to say like 8 to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, maybe less. Actually, it would have been like 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. So like it was from that, like that's where they came from. But you're basically giving them anything. It's like, hey, I'll give you a bigger territory. I'll give you a lower initial fee. Like just get them in. And so yeah, I'm very appreciative for the first 10, the first 30 even, before there's really any proof that we're even going to survive. Most franchises don't survive because there's a lot of them that start, but very few that actually stick around for a very long time because it's a very difficult business. And I can talk about that more. But yeah, how we got the first 10 is really just the content.
What are some of the boxes that would need to be checked for, let's say someone out there listening today, they've got a seven-figure lawn and land care business and they've been um, considering franchising. What are some of the boxes that business owner needs to check in order to be far more comfortable with actually going down the road of franchising?
Yeah,
Like,
like
how do they know they're ready?
Yeah, like everyone has this idea that they're going to franchise their business, and it's funny because like if I say anything negative about franchising, people think that I'm trying to like gatekeep franchising. So, but it's also a function of like the only people who know how it actually feels is the people who have started them and actually know what's going on. Because you're going to talk to every franchise business consultant, and they get paid to set up your franchise documents and your FDD and your operations manual. You just need 50 to 100 grand, and you can get that done, and you are now a franchisor. Is a very different business than selling the franchises, and it's a very different business than supporting the franchisees. And those are very different functions. It's nothing to do with lawn care. It has nothing to do with your actual service. You are now in the business of coaching. You're in the business of mentorship. You're in the business of marketing. And you're a marketing agency. You're an advertising agency. You're a content creator. So like it's a whole different business. And I think that franchising is going to get completely changed up in the next several years as a lot of private equity has moved in and bought out the legacy brands. And because of that, the way that they will market is simply based upon their reputation and their brand, which is valuable. But you're seeing cracks in this, even like with Subway, where now there's thousands of locations closing. They completely overwhelmed the market with locations being right next to each other. They did not operate in the best ideals of the owners and the franchisees, and for that reason, now the brand is suffering. And for years, they could just skate by with the fact that, hey, we're Subway, we're the best, like just by us. That doesn't work in the long term if you don't support the owner. So if the franchisee doesn't have great unit economics, if they're not growing year over year, same store sales aren't going up, if you're not supporting them adding more and more every single year, then your brand will eventually fail. And most of the time, the challenging part with franchising is you really usually have to get to 100 plus locations to become profitable. And if you look at almost every franchise, the ones that are successful get past 100 locations. If you don't, you usually die. The reason for that is because you need to be able to, from the get-go, to attract your first 100 owners, you need to be able to have the infrastructure required that require really 100 locations worth of revenue. And so you're going to burn a bunch of money. So either you're going to have private equity behind you, or you're going to have a debt, or you're going to have a cash flowing business. And many times what happens is people have one cash flowing business or a location, they go start this franchising thing and they dump all their money into it. And now they do a poor job of both because they can't really do, and now the first business suffers, and now the unit economics of their primary location suffers. And so I just see over and over and over again that people who say, I want to franchise my business, don't actually know what they're doing. They think they're just going to scale. They think they're going to create some documents. People are going to show up and give them money. And if that's the mentality that you have, you will not succeed as a franchisor. And it's just simply in the numbers. Like there was over 400 new franchises started last year. Less than 5 of them statistically will be around in 5 years. And so like the ability to actually stay in business as a franchisor is extremely difficult. And people just simply think they can sign some documents and people are going to show up and give them money. And that's, if that happens, you're in a world of hurt legally. And so, yeah, that's why there's so many bad actors. And unfortunately, the franchising gets a bad rap because of the 90% of people that just jump into it thinking it's so easy, and they don't give support to their owners. They don't do things in the best interest of owners. And for that reason, when we started, like, I was like, okay, great. You can leave at any time and there's no fee. You can take your customers at any time. We will give you your initial fee back if you just stay inside the systems for 5 years. So I just try to like build the franchise in a way like I would want to join it. I was a franchisee at Anytime Fitness beforehand, so I kind of knew like the pros and the cons. And so I just try to make it like a no-brainer as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point you made, and that's actually one that we've had Aaron Harper of Rolling Suds. You know him? Awesome.
I've heard of him. I do not know him personally, no.
Well, I'll have to make an intro. He's actually gonna be on the show next week. So, but he runs an incredibly awesome operation over at Rolling Suds, and his point was that franchising, becoming a franchisor, is just a completely different ball game. Much to your point, where he said it's not meant for every business owner. So he says everybody thinks they can do it, but very few actually can. So he's in lockstep with you on that, and I think that's just a great point to belabor. Is it's not right for everybody because it's a completely different ballgame. You go from a business owner to a franchisor where you're doing all those hundreds of different things that you weren't doing prior at your location that maybe has a couple branches, right? So just total different ballgame.
The level of success and the success rate of being a franchisee is so much higher, assuming you join a system that is going to support you, is going to do a lot of things, like, especially from 0 to a million. Like, there's so many things that a business owner has to do that you can just take off your plate as a franchisee. Your website you don't have to worry about branding and logos and colors and marketing schemes and your print digital stuff. Like, all of that's taken care of. Your email is set up for you. Like, all of these little things that clutter up the mind of a business owner, take it off your plate, and then you guys focus on growing the business. And that to me is the advantage of a franchise system. And the reason, like, I'm a big believer in franchising and why it even came up in my mind is that I owned Anytime Fitness. And I remember thinking, like, why in the world would anyone start a gym that's not a franchise? Like, I don't even know how you make the math work. And so I try to just take a lot of their principles and apply it to a service-based business.
I love it. I love it. One of the things we haven't hit on yet is the content that you produce. The everything you do on YouTube and through social media. I want to have you talk a little bit about that because it's obviously a massive part of your business and it's led to the growth of your business in so many different facets. So, kind of walk us through when you started. I know when you said back when you started Augusta is kind of when you started your journey with content. How did you start? What were you thinking with it, and what has it led to for you?
Yeah, so like the first few years was really just a function of me like sharing all the things that I was doing wrong in business and what I was changing. So pay for performance, estimate video, like all the systems we talk about. And that was literally just me in my bedroom up against the wall with a whiteboard. And I think that got to me like 8,000 subscribers and very, very niche content, not produced, no edits, just me standing up against the wall. Um, as went on, there was one of our guys out in the field was a friend of mine, and I knew he was kind of like looking at something besides lawn care. He'd worked for me for 3 or 4 years. I said, "Hey, look, if you can stick around until June 2020, I will get you full time in doing media." Because I knew he liked cameras and video equipment, etc. Well, all of a sudden, like that was like 2019. Well, COVID hits. So I pulled him right out of the field a little early and said, "Hey, let's go full into this." And so that's when we started creating content more religiously. And like every single year for the past 5 years, it's just been a function of as we make more money on the media, we just spend more. And so like it's very much the Mr. Beast idea, like just make better videos and pour money into the videos. And so like today, like even up to this day, there's probably like 10, 11 team members full time on the media only, and to over $2 million that we'll spend on like the traveling, and we go out and do these turnarounds and create free courses and all this stuff. But it's just a function of like it's the marketing branch of the business, whether it be for the CRM, for the software stuff, for the franchise, like all of that. Like we do tons of websites. It's all just from the content. So I look at it as like the marketing machine that happens to pay us, and if we can just break even on it and just keep scaling it up and hopefully generate more leads for the businesses.
Absolutely. Do you recommend smaller operators, smaller business owners right now that they be dedicating a certain amount of time every day or every week towards creating content or documenting their day and sharing it?
Um, it really depends. Like if you want to become famous, then yes. And again, when I say famous, I just mean awareness. Like people know who you are. And if that somehow aligns to your goals of like, if you want to help your industry, if you want to help other business owners, then yes. Um, Keep in mind when you create something on Facebook, create something on YouTube, your audience is inherently the entire world. And so if your goal is to be famous, then yes, you would create broad topic, broad awareness around you, your personality, your industry. If you want to make more money, and this is what I suggest 99.9% of people do in home services or any local business, is you become the mayor of your city, and everything that happens in your local area, you comment on it, you post about it from the framework of a landscaper, the framework of a barber, a framework of a builder, like whatever you are for your local community, and then people come and follow you because they know you are tapped into your local ecosystem. And so if you want to make more money, that's what you do. Like if there's a new mayor in town, you're like, go mow the grass for the mayor, take a picture, say welcome to the community, blah, blah, blah. Like every single business owner can become the mayor of their city on social media, where everyone in your local area wants to follow you because you are the digest for what happens in your local town. And that can be 5,000 people, that can be 50,000 people, that can be 100,000 people. The smaller, the better, because you become a micro influencer in that area and you will absolutely generate more leads. But generating content about your day, how you feel about your business, the things you're changing your business, a project you're doing, you're going to tap into like 0.01% of the people that watch your video will be in your market and will be a potential lead. And so be very clear as to am I trying to be famous or am I trying to make more leads? And if you're trying to make more leads, stay very narrow on the scope of your demographic. If you're showing a project, show Main Street. We're in Main Street here in Bellingham, or like show all the landmarks so people are like, oh, this is for me. And yeah, it's a function of which one do you want.
Yeah, yeah, it's basically doing your own PR and using that as part of your marketing arm because it's not necessarily creating content. You are, I guess you are technically creating forms of content, but it's extremely directed and targeted towards driving leads. Like you said, making more money or trying to be famous. So I think there's a lot of people that get confused between that where they're like, "Oh, I need to be posting more, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that." Well, maybe you need to be more interactive in your community and taking part in more of what's going on in the digital realm so that people understand who you are, where you are, and what you do for them.
Yeah, and I think even as we go into the era of AI, it's just even so much more important for a personal brand because inherently a personal brand is human. A human makes mistakes. AI doesn't make mistakes, and it's perfect every time. And so the imperfections of you behind the camera or not being able to say words correctly, et cetera, is actually what differentiates you from AI. And so inherent like, mistakes are inherently human. And so I think most people are afraid to get in front of a camera or record what they're doing or a project they're on. What if someone picks me apart? You are a human, and that is what differentiates you from AI. And I believe that's actually a huge win for you to get behind the camera, a further reason as to why you should share about what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And when just us civilians see business owners that are out there putting their stuff out there and it's imperfect, perfectly imperfect, then we relate to that. You know, we understand that, hey, that guy's not perfect either, just like me. And then now you've checked that one box with that possible lead, that possible new business that has said, I'm like that guy or I'm like that gal.
Yeah, and once
Yeah.
people know, like, and trust in your local community, the likelihood of them buying from you is much higher than someone they see another ad from. And so that's where creating personal social media content is going to win, and like why being an influencer, even if that means in your local market, is so important because it drives customers. Like if you're like, I just want to make a bunch of money, great. You still need to do this. The reason for that is because you can get customers for nothing. And so, even if you want to make more money, if you want to be famous, or if you just want more leads, like regardless, like make content, be a human, make mistakes in front of the camera, share where your wins and your losses are, and more importantly, be very clear in terms of what your demographic and your target audience is. Is that local, or am I trying to actually talk to the entire country?
Should this local business owner be on multiple platforms or should they pick one or very few and focus on them?
I think it's more a function of like what's your bandwidth for this. And so like when I start looking at like all the things you're doing in the business, can I is posting to social media going to make me money today? Probably not. Building a personal brand, no. I might get 3 views on my first video. You're not
Mhm.
driving any awareness. Your time would probably be better spent doing a follow-up phone call and closing 3 jobs in the next hour instead of making this content. And so there's very much of balance. And like social media and brand building is very much of a long-term play. So I would look at it as like I'm planting the seeds. I'm going to spend some time, this is my discretionary time, the evenings, the weekends, etc. I'm going to be putting the seeds in so it goes from 3 views to 5 views to 10 views to 40 views. And one day maybe I'm getting 100, 200 views in my local area, 20 of which have my demand for my service and they're going to buy from me. But right now, like today, you probably need to pick up the phone, do a follow-up phone call. You probably need to go sell the next job. You probably have the person that's waiting for an estimate request form that you need to go to their house. That's going to put food on your table today. And it'd be stupid for me. And there are influencers that say like, yes, just do social media, just make content. It's like, look, I need to also provide for my family here. And so
Right.
I think it's like long term, I need to plant the seeds of content. I need to plant the seeds of building the personal brand, whether it be locally or nationally. And then I also need to like focus on today, working 12 to 14 hours, making money.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, you have brought a whole pot of gold here to the MU crowd. Just so much knowledge and information. We're up against time here. I could stay and chat much longer. There's so much that goes into building a business like yours. But thank you for joining us and sharing all your information with us. I want to make sure that all of our listeners out there, if they want to check out your channels, check out Augusta Lawn Care, maybe see if there's a location near them, or maybe they're interested in buying into a franchise location, what are the best places to reach you or reach out to you guys?
Yeah, just go to mikeandys.com. All the courses are free. I just did a new workshop on there. It's completely free. We try to do everything as we possibly can for free. So it's all on there. And then watch the YouTube channel. We do these turnaround shows. There's one coming out tomorrow. It's really good. $1.7 million business owner that has a lot of ego problems. So we went into the business like an hour and a half long. Hopefully it's helpful. But yeah, I just check all those channels out.
Oh, cool. Awesome. That sounds fantastic. I'll have to check that out as well. That sounds fun. All right. Well, Mike, thanks again, man. This has been awesome. And best of luck to you guys in the rest of 2025.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.